Good evening and welcome. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear? Oh, perfect. Okay, I think they were trying to show a video of the Rabbi to start off the event, which is something that Yudi would always enjoy doing, starting off with something from the Rabbi, but we weren't able to hear or see. They were gathered here tonight to celebrate and Farbrengen in honor of Yudi's Chaim Shner Zalman Yehuda's birthday. This is something that just a short year ago, I remember it like yesterday. Yudi was in Cornell and having a very tough day. And when I was able to come and visit him, we brought birthday hats and birthday cakes, and we hung up together birthday signs in his room and birthday wishes from his friends. And his mood changed to the extent that the next day when I got back to the to America's 302, to the JNet office, we decided to make a Farbrengen, because every year this is something that Yudi was very, very careful about, starting from his apartment in Crown Heights and then in the 5 towns. He would always fulfill all of the Rebbe's specific directives, especially the ones connected to the birthday, when he would make a birthday Farbrengen and Farbrengen together and always bring someone special to Farbrengen. And so the entire office got together during the day last year, and we were very, very lucky that Yudi joined us on his iPad and Farbrengen with us and Chazer the Maimer. So I think the most appropriate way for us to start off tonight's Farbrengen, before we hear from his family and friends and watch the videos, would be to sing the Hachana Nigun that we would prepare before a birthday boy says a mimer, and then if we can please share the audio and the video or the slideshow from last year when Yudi said the mimer last year. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Groner, who has put this together, and a big Yesher Koyach for all of the effort and energy that went into this. Everybody can just take a few minutes and we'll hear the mimer that Yudi said last year.
There's lots of peace to those who love your Torah, and they will not falter. So, and it's known that some of the Chabad Rabbeim, had some questions on this pasuk, and specifically the Frierdiker Rabbi brings out some questions. That first of all, from the fact that it says Shalom Rav, a lot of peace, so we understand that there's different levels of peace. There's a little peace, there's regular peace, and then there's a lot of peace. So we have to understand, what does it mean that there's a lot of peace for those who love your Torah? And also, why is it, when it describes the lovers of your Torah, it doesn't really seem to be the right way to describe it, because the way you learn something is by studying. So a proper way to describe it would have been to say, to those who study your Torah. Why to those who love your Torah? So also we have to understand, why is it that specifically through this we have this this promise that we will not falter if we get this great peace because of loving the Torah. So that it says those who love your Torah specifically is because that when we study Torah, it has to come first with the service of davening, and which we know is the same concept as that the Jewish people had to make a bracha on the Torah before they learned it, because a bracha seemingly has nothing to do with something that you study. But when you make a bracha, you're showing that this actually, the reason why we're learning is not because it's another piece of study material, but because this is a mitzvah. So we're taking God and we're putting it into the Torah. And that is also the concept of avodas tefillah, service of Hashem through davening, is that idea that we're bringing godliness into the Torah that we learn afterwards. And that's why it says to those who love your Torah, because like it says in the Zohar, there is no service like the service of love. So when we talk about serving God and the service of davening, that is love. And so really, so that's why we use the phrase to those who love your Torah, because that this is actually a lesson for us that when we study, we can't just study Torah like a subject. We have to prepare ourselves and make sure that that study is infused with the intention that this is Hashem's Torah. And because we all know that the whole purpose of study, we say that studying Torah is greater than actually doing mitzvahs, but that's only because that you need to study also in order to know what to do. But the main purpose of the study of Torah is so that we should do the mitzvahs. So therefore, since when we study the Torah properly, with bringing the Hashem into the Torah first through our service of davening, so then ein lamay michshol, then we don't falter that the kiyum mitzvahs. The reason why we're doing the mitzvahs also is not because of some academic thing that we studied the Torah, came up with a good argument, and so now I'm going and doing good deed. No, because we prepared ourselves before the learning. We davened and we learned with the intention that Hashem is the one who's telling us to learn. So then our mitzvahs are also being done in the proper way. And that's why ein lamay michshol. So now when we study Torah in this way, which we have the love of Hashem, and which means the davening beforehand, so this is, and which that brings Hashem down into this world. So then we affect that this world becomes a place where there's not just plain peace, but there's a lot of peace. And like we say also in the same paragraph, that that those who study Torah, they increase the peace in the world. So what does this mean? It says actually that when the world was created, it was complete. We all know that we were here to fix up this broken world. So it was complete, and now we're fixing it, and then it's going to be complete again. But nevertheless, what does it say? That even though the world was created complete, that it was actually trembling up until the point when the Yidden accepted the Torah on Har Sinai, because the entire creation of the world was there only for the fact that the Yidden should accept the Torah. Because that the 10 Aseres Adibris were dependent. The 10 Asar Mamaros that created the world were dependent on the Yidden accepting Aseres Adibris, the 10 Commandments, and only then did the world stop shaking and trembling. And the same is true with each one of us, that we make increased peace in the world when we do our davening, when we learn and do our mitzvahs with the preparation of davening properly and bringing the Nois and Torah Hashem into everything we do. And this is the Yesh Kasher that the Rabbi says we can connect this to this week's parsha as well. That there are three things. It says Bagefen Shloisha Sarigim, that in the butler's dream there were three bushels of grapes, and the Razal tell us that Gefen is the Yidden, the 3 bushels are the Avos, and the Zohar says that the 3 bushels are the Kohanim, the Levim, and the Yisraelim. And the Tzemach Tzedek says that the 3 bushels actually are the 3 kavim, the 3 pillars that the world was created, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim, and those are the 3 things also from where it's what it says, Pada v'shalei nafshi, that that kol ha'osik b'Torah uv'gemilas chasadim u'mispalel l'matzibur, those three things, ma'ilani alach ki'ilu pedani li luvan el menu sa'elam. And that's the drush on Pada V'Shaleh. So again, this peace over here, this incredible peace that we're bringing into this world, happens when we do these three things. We prepare ourselves before davening properly. We daven and then go learn properly. And then, of course, the rest of our days infused with the nice Torah and this incredible peace, which doesn't allow any kind of friction whatsoever. And through all this, that the Kohanim B'Avidasam, the Leviim B'Duchanam, and the Yisrael B'Mamadam, they all come and they're makriv one carbon that Hashem wants. And through the avodah in these three kavim b'shleimus, we come to, like it says, Gefen Elu Yisrael, Shenemar Gefen Mitzrayim Tasiyah. That it's the grapes are like the Yidden, because, like it says, the grapes from Mitzrayim traveled onward. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in his Maimer and Yud Beis Talmuz that the whole purpose of Galus is Tasiyah, the great Aliyah that's going to come after it. And like Yutes Kislev, that the Meiser and the Geula caused that the Hafat Samayanos was even much greater afterwards. So through this, we will accomplish the Yefutzim Anisach Chutza and Achdus B'nai Yisrael coming to the Geula in the way of Tasiyah, Zizus, Mher of Yameinu Mamash, Bevias, Mashiach Tzidkenu.
Okay, we're now going to ask Mendy Dukes to please share with us the Dvar Torah. Go ahead, Mendy.
Okay, so in the new kapitel, which is kapitel Memalev, concludes with the pasuk Baruch Hashem Lekei Yisrael, Baruch Hashem Lekei Yisrael, Elam Bad Elam, which is the end of Separation of Tehillim. So we see that David HaMelech emphasized the word Elam twice. From Chazal and the Farshim, we see that the double expression can be understood in two ways. Number one, this world and Elam Haba are this world and Elam Haba, where the neshamas are. Number two, this world and the world of Tchias Mesim when Mashiach comes. And that this emphasis was specifically placed to challenge those that only believe in our limited physical world. So in the kapitel, we're saying for the first birthday after my father's yahrzeit, that Hashem is sending us a reminder that there is a spiritual, relevant world where the neshama lives, from where the neshama could continue to give, if even in a less obvious way, support and love. And even more so, there's a future world where miraculously all the neshamas return to this world, which will be in a higher state then. May all this come to be speedily in our days.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mendy. We'll now play a short niggin. Hopefully the sound is going to work. And let's see if this works out.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here to join you tonight on this very special evening. Before I begin remarks, I would like to share a thought, an anecdote that took place in the early 1990s. The Rebbe was in shul for Tisha B'Av, the regular Tisha, the Ma'ariv and Eicha. And as was customary at the time, as soon as the Rebbe left the room, the head of teaching Hasidic thought in 770, Rabbi Yoel Kahn, would teach a Hasidic discourse that the Rebbe actually had given in 1971 about the Lamentations. And the Rebbe left the room, and things moved quickly in 770, and he started teaching. So the Rebbe left the room, and the Rebbe left the elevator and went into the elevator to go upstairs. What Rabbi Kahn may have not known is that his talk was being broadcast upstairs as well. So when the Rebbe exited the elevator, he's standing in the hallway and he's listening to the Hasidim downstairs talking about this the mimer that he had given years before, and the Rebbe listened for some time. The reason why I reminded of the story is that we're Farbrengen downstairs, Yudi's upstairs, and I hope that he's listening to our Farbrengen, and we're as we celebrate this very special milestone of 40 years old, where it actually says, the Talmud teaches in Avodah Zarah, page 5, that at the age of 40 years old, a person begins to get on their teacher's frequency, on their Rebbe's frequency, begin to truly understand the Rebbe. It's a very special milestone. In our home, we have a custom I'd like to share with you, that at a birthday, a custom started by my wife, that at a birthday party, we go around the table and we share something that we love and we admire about the birthday person. By the way, this is before you get cake. You don't get cake until that goes down. So tonight we're going to say something that we love and admire about the birthday person, Rabbi Yudi Dukes, with an emphasis on Va'achai Yitin Eliboy, that the Rebbe always emphasized that we apply these lessons that we learn from Yudi and to apply them to our own lives. So I'd like to share two things. There's many things, but for this evening, two things that we love and admire about Yudi, and we can apply them to our own life. I know that Mrs. Dukes is listening. I know the kids are listening, and the entire community is listening. So I want to share something that very special about Yudi that we can all apply to our own life. And that is, one is hashtag no excuses. And I'll expand on that. So when Yudi was in the hospital, there were many different journeys. Like the Torah says, he camped here and he traveled there. He camped there and he traveled there. So there was the Kimmel Hospital, different rooms in the Kimmel Hospital. There was the Tish Hospital. There was Langone. There was Presbyterian and back, and different rooms in each one, and many different ups and downs, a real roller coaster throughout the entire time. And during this period of time, I received a call. My wife and I direct the Chabad House in Manhattan, and we got a call from someone from Crown Heights, actually someone from Flatbush that was rushed to the hospital, had COVID, and he was rushed before he had his tefillin. They need tefillin. Okay, so I called the chaplain and I called a few other people locally, and everyone had valid excuses not to go. At the time, this fellow was in Kimmel, and Yudi was in rehab in Langone, and I hesitated to call Yudi, but after everybody else, now you have to remember also at that time, Yudi was not walking at the time. He was wheelchair bound, but I knew if I call him, he'll get it done somehow. I have no idea how. So later in the day, and I called Yudi, and I told him it's someone's tefillin. I don't know how exactly got the tefillin over, but I got big thank yous from this guy in the completely different wing of the hospital that Yudi got it done. Got it done. So to be a chassid, to be a true chassid at Daita de Rebbe, it's very easy to talk and talk the talk. But it's another thing completely to get it done. And Yudi got it done. He was very focused. on what he did, and for us to, and everyone in their own life, we all know what needs to get done, and so to get it done. Not something else also that we love about the birthday boy and admire about the birthday boy, with an emphasis to apply it to our own life. Also like to suggest a little hachlata here, an easy hachlata. I don't like when people like lay on these heavy, big hachlatas. Tomorrow everyone's doing, 10 maimarim in this. We're going to something easy and something nice. Is that we just came from Yutas Kislev. Yudi's birthday is right after Yutas Kislev. His name presumably, Rabbi Duke says Rabbi Duke Senior, presumably he's named for the Alter Rebbe, the Mishnah Zalman, born around Yutas Kislev. So we wish each other L'shana Tova b'limud haChasidus and b'darkei Chasidus. And so there's two things that Yudi really excelled in limud haChasidus. Yudi was really on talking terms with Tanya. I mean, I know some of us, we know chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter Yud is the tzaddik, Yud Aleph is the Rasha, Yud Beis is the Beinani. But then there's like chapters deep in. Yudi knew these chapters. He knew them well. A lot of them Baal Peh. But I'm not focusing on that. I'm going to focus on something else. There's Darkei Chasidus, which is the way of Chasidus. Not just the study of Chasidus, but there's a way. And namely, Chabad Nigunim. Chabad Nigunim are Chabad melodies, special Chabad melodies. By most estimates, there are over 500 Chabad melodies. Some of them are obscure. Yudi knew a lot of them. I would say most of them. And a melody is very special. They tell a story about the Alter Rebbe that I'm going to sort of paraphrase here, that some people were having a hard time understanding the Tanya, and I'm going to paraphrase within the parlance of our language. He said, you got the manual, but you didn't get the soundtrack. Once you listen to the niggin and things start clicking, there's a famous story about the Alter Rebbe, that people, when he went to the city of Shklov, there were scholars and they prepared lots of questions for him. And the Alter Rebbe went onto the bima, he went onto the stage in the synagogue, and he started singing a Hasidic melody. And it's not that their questions were answered, but all of a sudden the questions weren't questions anymore. So a niggin, a Hasidic melody, takes us to a more spiritual place. And when I would visit Yudi in the hospital, we would typically talk Likutei Torah or Torah of Shabbos, and we would sing Nigunim. And one niggin we would always sing is called the Pastach. It's a shepherd, a beautiful melody, which is within this melody is the Hashem is our shepherd, and it has built in piety and Hasidic emotion. So soon I'm going to, as Achlata, I was thinking that maybe we could all learn this melody, and because it's one of Yudi's favorite tunes, and I'm going to post it a little later on the chat here on the notes. I'll conclude with this: is that Yudi was very mindful of his 40th birthday, and I'll tell you this: it was the last Shabbos before Yudi passed, and the rules were constantly changing in the hospital. All the hospitals during COVID, you could have 2 guests for 3 hours, for 2 hours. So the final Shabbos, they had a rule that only one guest for the entire whatever was available for that Shabbos. That Shabbos, Yudi was up, he was conscious, and he had a letterboard. He couldn't communicate at that point verbally, but he had a letterboard and he was up. And it was 3 hours or 4 hours of communication time. But I felt uncomfortable that it was difficult for him to talk. I wanted him to enjoy my presence. I didn't want to sit there like a goylam or even say Tehillim because I wanted to raise his spirits. So I walked into the room and I told him like this: this is how it's going to go down. I'm going to be the jukebox. I'm going to sing the gunim for the duration of the day. And I said, this is the off button. Want to turn me off, just push over here and I won't sing if you're not interested anymore. Anyway, so I launched into a bunch of nigunim, and before I left, he went like this to me. So I didn't know what he was referring to. So he was able to still a little bit sort of verbalize. And he said, not even 40. He worded it out. And he was mindful of his 40th birthday. And so he very much wanted to live. We very much want him to live. So now that he's upstairs, as he teased before, we want him here, and we look forward to, right now there's this moment of Rega Kotan Azavtich, for this moment that we're here. We yearn for him to be downstairs with us very soon with the coming of Mashiach, maybe speedily in our days.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Metzger. That was very, very sweet. We'll now ask Rabbi Yisrael Levin, who got to know Yudi very, very well over Yom Tov in North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
North Carolina, yeah. So please, Rabbi Levin, if you could share with us a little bit of your memories of Yudi, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go right ahead.
Thank you. L'chaim, l'chaim. And I want to say l'chaim to everybody, l'chaim to the family. L'chaim Yudi, l'chaim, l'chaim. We were zeiche, myself, my wife, and our entire community, that Rabbi Yudi came over every year for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur to lead us during the davenings, to lead us through the davening and to lead us through the Kriyas HaTorah. And that, I think, went on for close to 10 years. We were lucky enough to have the entire Dukes family when they were very, very small. I think the first time they came, there were only 2 children. And over the years, there were more, Baruch Hashem. And it was a pleasure to have them all those years. I just want to share a little bit on the impact that Rabbi Yudi had on me and on my family and on our community. And this impact, it's a lasting impact because it's still going on. Yudi came, as I mentioned, every year for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And actually it took me a while to understand that impact. A lot of it was after Yudi wasn't able to come anymore. And I realized how a lot of people actually looked at Yudi as our rabbi, our rabbi, people that saw him once a year, people that saw him 2 times a year. During that entire 10 months that Yudi was battling, the first question they were asking me was, how's any update from Yudi? Any update from Yudi? And they wanted to know the inside. I know they all were following Sarah on Facebook, and they were all getting all the updates all the time, but they wanted to know more information about their own rabbi. And it's just an amazing, the impact that he had on the community. And I wanted to share a few things. I'm going back, I think it was about end of Tammuz or beginning of Tafshin Pei. And Rosh Hashanah was approaching. And Yudi and I, we had a deal. Our agreement was that he's coming back. And if any of us, for any reason, cannot come back, it's that person is, or if I'm not planning on him coming back for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we need to let each other know if it's not happening. But the lechatchila is that he's coming and the family is coming back. And that's why I never even reached out anymore. It was a clear thing. Sometime I spoke to him just a week or 2 before Rosh Hashanah, just to find out details about what he may need and the kids and sleeping arrangements and stuff like that. But it wasn't it was a known thing that the Duke's family are coming and Yudi is going to lead us again. And it was end of Tammuz or something. I remember I think it was an evening. I was in the middle of my summer camp that year and I was busy. And I'm getting a WhatsApp call from Yudi, a video call. And he calls me and he's starting to sing the Kaddish of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the tune of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, with Yudi's smile. And I think it was in the hospital or the rehab at the time. And after he finished singing the song and the melody, he said to me, so Yisrolik, B'derech HaTeva, the way it looks, I'm not going to be able to lead the services this year for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And I'm worried about you. And I wanted to make sure that you're not that you're not going to be left without anybody doing it, and you need to look for somebody, because I don't think I'm going to have the koiches. Hopefully, I'll be out of the hospital, and hopefully, I'll be able to come to Charlotte. But I don't think I'm going to be able to stand and lead the services. So you need to find someone else. And I'm worried. I want to make sure, and maybe I'm going to ask somebody. He was worried about me laying in the hospital, and worried about our community. Who is going to lead us during Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur? And then that Elul. There was, I think, 5 days before Rosh Hashanah, Elul Tovshin Pei. And it was that Elul just a few days before the holidays. And we had a Zoom call for our community in honor of Rosh Hashanah. We already had another Chazan coming, another young man that came to lead the services, and it was all planned. But we had a pre-Rosh Hashanah gathering on Zoom with the members of our community, and Yudi, and I think some of his family members. Sarah was there, was on too, and the kids. And I spoke to him before, and I said, "What should we do? What's the plan?" So he said, "I'm going to share a few words." And he said, and I said, "What else do you want to do?" And he said, "I'm going to sing. Maybe we're going to sing some of the Rosh Hashanah melodies." I think he said Avinu Malkeinu, and he said, "We're going to sing Toikef." And it was a very, very move. And I remember he said to me, I said, "Yudi, but how do I know? Can you do it?" He said, don't feel bad for me. He said, "Don't feel bad for me. You push me. And I'll do it. And if I can't do it, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to send you a text or whatever. I'm going to figure out a way how to know to you on the Zoom that I can do it." And he said, "But let's do the songs first, because I don't want to lose my energy. And that takes a lot of my energy. And I don't want to, let's do the singing first." And Yudi was singing with us Avinu Malkeinu. And he was singing with us of Rosh Hashanah Yikosevon, of Yom Tzom Kippur Yechosemon. And it was such I was crying. My community people, we were all in tears. I wasn't next to them. They were all, each one in his own home. But the message that we got, and the inspiration, the way that, I would say, the way it affected the community, the messages that I got the following day, the emails and the text messages, our people were so amazed how Yudi laying in the hospital, and what he's worried about. He's worried about the little community in Charlotte, North Carolina, that our day Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is going to be. But I wanted to say there is one thing that I noticed, especially only after Yudi passed away. There was many people. There was one younger man, one guy that actually ended up joining JNet. And that was another thing. Yudi, I think this has come first. Yudi always, whenever he had an opportunity, after davening, before davening, we had a little Kiddush after Rosh Hashanah, after the davening, so doing Kiddush, he was always going to me and he said, "Okay, I need a potential, and I need to get few people for JNet. We have 100 people in the room right now, 60 people in the room. JNet right now." It was always on his mind. And, if we had a little community dinner for the nights of Rosh Hashanah, and he was there, he said, "Okay, who can I talk to about JNet?" And I think his goal was every year to come back from Charlotte with another 3-4 chavruses or potential chavruses, to do. And that was his passion. I remember explaining to the community that JNet is his day job. And when it comes to us for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's his second shift. That's his night job. But Yudi's main job is JNet, and that was his passion, and the passion that he has for learning Torah, and the passion that he had to share the learning Torah with people, and how people will do it. And we are zocher that there are a few people in our community that still learning on JNet, still have chavruses, and all from Yudi's push during this time. But I wanted to say, and I think if you're talking about v'achayit in a libon, and what can we, as the Rebbe always mentioned, that it's when we were sitting when we're thinking about someone that is no longer with us in this world, it's always v'achayit in a libon. Those over here that's still alive, what can we learn from him, and what can we learn from his life, and how can we learn from it? And this is something that I noticed only after the Maaseh. I did not notice it at the time while Yudi was still coming. I noticed that only after Yudi wasn't able to come anymore. People felt that they lost their best friend. people in my community felt that they lost their rabbi that cared about them and loved them and remember them. They felt they're the closest, he's the closest guy to them. And as I said before, they saw them twice a year. And even when they saw him twice a year, he was busy at the front. He was the chazan. And Yudi was not, he was doing the whole thing. From the beginning of Shachris till the end of Musaf, including Ne'ilah and Mincha of Yom Kippur and Kriyas HaTorah, he was standing at the front the entire time. And he had very little time to speak to people. And for somehow he managed to touch so many people on a personal level. I'm not even talking about those that tell me the davening and the way he was so artsy, and we felt like we are back to our old shul when we were kids, or this is remind me of my grandparents' shul. I got a lot of those. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that felt a special personal connection with Yudi. And as I mentioned before, I don't know how he managed to do it. And when I'm thinking about now, and I'm trying to reflect on all those years that we were Zoicha of Yudi coming here for spend with us the holidays, what I think and what I realize is when Yudi spoke to somebody, there was nothing else. There was nothing else in this world. He was able to devote himself, and he was able to give his entire self to the person that he's talking to. So if he was done davening, standing at the front for 4 hours, and standing the whole time, and now he made a little Kiddush on Rosh Hashanah, and he's sitting with somebody on the table, and he's speaking to him for 5 minutes. So during those 5 minutes, the person that was talking to him felt that he's all mine. Yudi has nothing else on his head. It's not about his children that are still running around, and it's not about the fact that he didn't have a chance to even drink or eat anything. Yudi, what he has on his head is me. And he was able to give it to everybody. He was able to give it to younger people, to children, to teenagers, and he was able to do it to the older people, to older ladies, to different people in our community. And this was a talent. It was a talent that he had, but I think it's also a lesson for us. It's a lesson for us, the importance of dealing with people as individuals. The lesson, and when we cannot just, we are on shlichus and we are busy with life, and each one is his own shlichus in life. And sometimes we're just rushing through life, and we're trying to arrange the big events, and we're trying to arrange the big programs, or whatever we are involved with. But don't forget the individual. Don't forget about the yochid, the people, and the effect that you have on people when you relate to them in such a way is unbelievable. And this is a pull on imsheches. The effect that Yudi and Sarah had on our community is something that's still going on every single day. There is no week pass without I hear from somebody something about the inspired, that they were inspired, or they're still being inspired by either Sarah's posts on Facebook or the conversations that they had with her in the past, or with Yudi and everything, and the battle that he went through, and the memories that we had from him. And l'chaim, I want to complete with the l'chaim that we'll learn from Yudi, and we learn from the Dukes family. For Yudi, from Sarah, from the kids, we should learn that, how to cherish the relationships that we have with people, with individuals, and to have the patience to give the attention to everybody, and the effect that we could have in the long run. We have people in our community. There is a family that struggles right now with some health issue in a family member, and every time I speak to them, would inspire them to go through right now and fight it, and to fight this battle is the battle that Sarah and Yudi were fighting for such a long time. So l'chaim, that will take it from us, and we'll take it from him, and we'll take it to our heart, and v'chait and alibo, it will be a pe'ula nimsheches, and we'll continue for later. L'chaim.
Chaim, Rabbi Levin, thank you so much. It's beautiful hearing how much Yudi cared for everybody, and even people that he didn't see all the time. It's very, very nice. We're now going to hear the Dukes family are coordinating a Sefer Torah to be written in the Ilu Nishmas Yudi. And I want to mention that anybody who would like can purchase a letter in the Sefer Torah. If you go to torah4yudi.org, Torah, Torah, for the letter 4, the number 4, Yudi, YUDI.org. It's in the chat, and you can purchase a letter. You could also take a achlata, or you can join JNet. Anything with Nishmas Yudi and Mitzvah Shem, we'll be able to have this Sefer Torah finished before the yard site. I'm going to ask now Yudi's father, Rabbi Aaron Dukes, to please share with us a few words.
L'chaim, l'chaim. I'm going to start with a little history that even predates Yudi. So I dropped out of my doctoral program in Cleveland and flew to Newark Airport because I wanted to spend a few weeks or a month or two finding out about my Jewish heritage at Yeshiva Tiferes Bachurim in Morristown. When I arrived, it was the night of Rosh Chodesh Kislev in Tafshin Lamed Ches. The yeshiva was rejoicing and dancing with the Sifrei Torah most of the night, celebrating the Rebbe's return home from his ICU transformed office after recovering from his massive heart attack. So this tremendous simcha, simcha's played together, this tremendous simcha broke through all my boundaries. And I then and there committed to myself that not a few weeks or months, I was going to stay in yeshiva as long as it took. So this started me on the road to becoming from meeting my wonderful Eishes Chayil Hinda and raising our Jewish family, which started with Yudi's birth 40 years ago, this coming Shabbos. Yudi was named Shner Zalman after the Alter Rebbe, who authored the Tanya, which inspired me to come to yeshiva, and Yehuda after the Maral, who played a critical role in the conversion of the son of the Duke and his subsequent marriage, which our last name comes from. The name Yehuda was originated, first of all, by Leah Imenu. She was expressing acknowledgement and gratitude for the opportunity to bring more Jewish people into the world than her proportionate share. Being that today, on a secular calendar, is Thanksgiving, I'd like to share with you how Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg Sheyichya suggests that we implement the Midah of Hoid, Thanksgiving, which are the root letters of Yudi's name. And it means acknowledgement, thanksgiving. So how do we implement that in our psychological avodah as finishing work that we start? Something like what Rabbi Metzger said, no excuses. We sometimes despair. In Hebrew, the letters daveh, which is the same letters of hoid, just mixed up. And we give up in the middle of a project because it seems too hard or not worthwhile seeing it to completion. So in general, it's our faculty of hoid, of acknowledgement, which is responsible for all forms of perseverance, persistence, and diligence, which enables us to accomplish an avodah tama, a work that is complete. Even though Moshe innovated and worked through most of the task of bringing Yosef's bones out of Mitzrayim and carrying them for 40 years, it's the Bnei Yisrael who the Torah gives credit to, since they finished the task of burying him in Shechem. Work that is complete also means psychologically feeling that the task you've just done is complete. Many times the Zohar quotes sages who said, "It was worth it for me to come into this world just to hear your Chiddush." The Baal Shem Tov said it's worthwhile to live 70 years and even more just to help one person, just one time. So when you do one mitzvah, it justifies your entire life. You might feel despair, daveh, that this act that you've just done is futile. What I do is for? Who really cares? Why did I expend so much time and resources? For what? But in Hashem's eyes, it's very valuable. Our service is needed above. I have to give thanks to Hashem for allowing me to successfully complete every action. Like we say Dayenu on Pesach night, giving thanks for each favor Hashem did for us in the long project of establishing our full relationship with Him, even though the later stages are still necessary. In some, Hoid, thanksgiving means working on finishing your tasks, not despairing in the middle, and giving thanks for every small job you finished, appreciating that it's a gift that God has given you and being content with it. So like Leah Imenu immortalized Yudi's name to mean giving thanks for the opportunity to bring more Jews than her share into the world, so too Yudi was grateful for every opportunity to set up another Jaynet Chavrusa, making each participant one of Hashem's and the Rebbe's shluchim in transforming the world and bringing Mashiach. The Rebbe campaigned, every shliach needs to recruit another shliach. Through Jaynet, Yudi probably personally recruited more shluchim than nearly all other shluchim did, way more than his share. And he was tremendously grateful for this opportunity. So the Chumash portion for Yudi's birthday, this coming Shabbos, describes how Yosef did not despair while he was in prison. Rather, he showed great consideration, care, and concern for his fellow prisoners, the butler and the baker, asking them why they were upset and then interpreting their dreams for them. While Yudi was similarly imprisoned for many months in the hospital, he also did not despair, but he viewed each meeting with a doctor, nurse, or visitor as an opportunity to do them a favor, inspiring them to connect to Hashem, and considering it as an occasion to fulfill his shlichus, his mission in life, and thanking Hashem for each such opportunity. The Rebbe teaches us it takes 40 years to appreciate our teacher's perspective. 40 years ago, this Shabbos, a few hours after Yudi was born, the Rebbe said a mimer on the pasuk Shalom Rav Loive Ve'ein Lo Mei Nichshel. This is the mimer that Yudi was hazarding at the beginning of this Farbrengen. There's a hemshich from Podav V'Shalom mimer from Yutes Kislev, which explained that Hashem considers everybody who makes Torah and helping his fellow his business and prays with a minyan as somebody who's redeemed Hashem and his children from among the nations. So in this mimer, the Rebbe explains that while each of the activities of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim are important, the three great clusters in the butler's dream represent three groups: Koyanim, specializing in Avodah, Leviim in Torah, Yisraelim in Gemilas Chasadim, and through Shalom, they become one entity. But Shalom Rav, to achieve great Shalom, that's achieved not only by those engaged in each activity, appreciating the contribution of the others engaged in different activities, but when each of us combines all three in our personal avodah. So as in Yudi's name, Shnei Eir, the double light of the revealed and inner Torah, Zalman, which is the letters Lizman, which means now's the time to perform mitzvahs, and Yehuda, the avodah of gratitude, may we each come to appreciate the perspective of this mimer and implement all these three avodas personally. May we come to appreciate the perspective of this mimer of our Rebbe after 40 years and learn from our birthday boy. Happy birthday, Yudi. L'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim. It's very, very beautiful. And mamish amazing how Yudi really exemplified the mimer that was said on his birthday. You know, not many people were zeichet to have a mimer on his birthday, and then to see how mamish it fits so well. We will now ask a close friend of Yudi, Rabbi Mati Lipska from Crown Heights, to please share with us some divrei chizuk, some inspiring words. Rabbi Lipska is very, very famous in Crown Heights for his warm divrei chizuk and his beautiful stories. So please, Rabbi Lipska, go ahead.
Chaim, Chaim. So first, happens to be I was talking to Yudi about turning 40. I turned 40 before him. So at one of our visits, we were talking about the fact that we're in our 40th year and about to turn 40. So I mentioned a vart to him and he liked it, so I'm going to say it. I didn't think if it has any specific relevance to him or not, but he enjoyed the vart. That the B'Shmelka of Nikolsburg brought a Gemara. The Gemara in Shabbos says that till 40 years old, food is good for a person, and after 40 years old, drinks are good for a person. That's where it comes in Lubavitch that we drink after 40 years old. So he explained what's pshat. He said like this: food spoils if you leave it around for too long. So for the first 40 years of a person's life, they're supposed to look at themselves as if they're food. They're Hashem's food in this world. And we have to look at our time as if it's very precious and it's every moment is important. And if we don't use it out, it's going to spoil. And that's meant to motivate us to keep on going, keep on trucking. After 40, so a lot of people look back, the midlife crisis, we look back and we're like, what did I do 40 years? Did I accomplish anything? It's hard to look back at those 40 years. So for that, said the Shmalka, now it's time to look at yourself like mashke. Mashke meaning a drink. What's the most sophisticated drink is wine. Wine only gets better as it ages. So after 40, a person has to look at themselves and say, okay, now everything that's going to happen now is going to be with better quality. It's aged. It's all the life experience. Yudi did manage to fill up, he didn't let any of his food spoil. In the almost 40 years he lived, he didn't let any of his food spoil. To follow Rabbi Shmuli's theme he started off with, he's a hashtag Yudi has no excuses. I think that's a very accurate description of Yudi from as long as I know him. Very determined. And if he puts his mind to something, he just did it. There's something else along those lines that I was thinking about today. Also has to do with the parsha. His birthday is going to be on Parshas Vayeshev. So probably one of the most dramatic stories from Yosef is Yosef's in prison. Okay, why is he in prison? He's in prison because he was falsely accused of doing a low-life crime. And you know what it feels like when you're accused of something you didn't do. Now, Yosef had all the excuses to be what you would call today, an angry teenager. He could have been angry at the entire world, starting with his own family. They sold him into slavery. They almost killed him, then they sold him as a slave. As far as they knew, they would never see each other again. So he was cut off from his family. He finally makes his way. He comes down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt. He works his way up. He works really hard. Then his boss accuses him, throws him into prison. He's sitting in prison now. He doesn't know what's going to happen with him. And one day, the chief butler and the chief baker are thrown into prison along with him. And if you look at the Mefarshim, you'll see that he was assigned to be their room service. He had to clean the cell, and he had to bring them their food and clean up the food. That was his job. He had no permission to hang around, no permission to talk to them. It was inappropriate for someone, a common criminal like him, to talk to ministers like them. One morning he comes in and he sees that they looked a little sadder than they did the day before. So he walks over to them and he says, why do you look so bad today? I guess, between men, you could ask each other that question. Why do you look so bad today? But they did. They looked bad. And Yosef asked, why do you look so bad? And what do you know? They answered him. And he told them their dreams, and he interpreted the dreams. So the Rebbe once spoke about this, several times, but specifically regarding this message of Tavshin Lamed Daled, end of 1974. And the Rebbe said, as if a mother is telling her son the story. So the mother tells the son, look at Yosef HaTzadik. Here you have someone who had all the excuses to cut off everybody in the world and have no patience for anybody, not want to help anybody, let alone an Egyptian. And he went over to these two people because he saw that they were hurting. And he said, what's wrong? And from here you see the mother tells the child, that was painting this picture as if a mother's telling her child a story. Here you see how a Yid has to be sensitive to everybody. Even if the person is not a Jew like you are, but they have, today's Thanksgiving, like you mentioned before. Al Pi Torah, every human being has an inalienable right to be happy. That's what the Rebbe says. Doesn't mention Thanksgiving, but the very fact that the Eibusher created a person gives them the right that they should be happy. Yosef HaTzadik sees another person that's not happy, so he walks over to the person to see if he could bring them joy. So the mother tells the son, this is what you could learn from Yosef HaTzadik. But then the son turns to the mother and says, okay, but what did that do for Yosef? The very last words of this week's parsha are going to be one big echoing Vayishkocheyu, and he forgot him. So Yosef helped out this guy, this Psadamashkim, got him out of prison. And then he forgot about Yosef, and Yosef sat in prison for another 2 years. So the Rebbe says, the mother tells the child, oh, wait till the end of the story. The end of the story is that Paro needed an interpreter. So the Saddam Ashkim said, I have the perfect guy for you. He's a slave in prison. We'll bring him out and he'll interpret your dreams. Yosef interpreted the dreams. The next thing you know, he's the viceroy of Mitzrayim, and he saved the whole world from famine, and he saves his whole family. So instead of the Rebbe, you see the power of just one kind word, one small act. Yosef didn't know what's going to come of it. What makes me think about Yudi regarding this story is, well, really two things. First, as far as his personality goes, is he had the guts. I have to say this. He had the guts, and he did it often. He did it to me. He did it to other friends. And he did it to strangers. I call it guts, the courage, the decency, the gutzkeit, to walk over to someone and say, hey, you don't look so, you look like something's wrong. You don't look so happy today. What's doing? He had no problem doing that. Meaning to say, a lot of times we hold back from doing that because we're afraid of being rejected. I went over to somebody in the shul. The guy gave me over the head for asking him. Okay? I tried to be like Yudi. No, not everyone's a Yudi, but Yudi had he had that courage, and if someone turned him down, he did it again. He didn't stop. You know, like you're saying, no excuses. He had a mamash of gutzkeit, and he didn't let anything stop him. That's number one. And number two, you see how especially now when he was sick, we saw it so much with him and Adol Chaim Tovim, his wife. We see how these little acts were not so little anymore. They made their way around the world. So I think you're right that the Chayit and Aliba to learn a lesson from Yudi is maybe talking something as small as that, like Rabbi Shmuley was saying before. Take a small lesson. A small lesson means find one individual, one person a day, one person a week. Don't make an effort, even if it's difficult to us, to walk over to the person, say good morning, ask them how they're doing, even when it's difficult for us. But you could literally change a person's life, and you never know how many lives you could change as a result of that. As far as the theme of Yudi, maybe you could even offer someone to learn with them. If it's not once a week, if it's not so, how do you say, so consistent like JNet is, but even if it's something, you could lift up a person's spirits, even if you learn with them once. I know Yudi used to do that. We'll learn once. In fact, he told me that's his whole strategy with JNet. And he got me to do it because he said his strategy is that he doesn't ask for a lot at a time. Small commitments. That was his strategy, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Just hand off with this. There's an interesting thing about 40. If you ask, your average Yid, if you think of 40, what do you think of? What do you associate with 40? So most of us will associate a mikveh. In order for a mikveh to be kosher, it needs to have 40 sa of water. So there's an interesting, the Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam, it's a very interesting chakir. He says like this. We typically think when does someone become pure? When they dip into the mikveh, they become pure. So the Kesef Mishnah, written by the Beis of Cairo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, he says something interesting. He says a person becomes pure when they leave the mikveh. When a person leaves 40 years, after 40 years, that's when those accomplishments really crystallize, and that's when the person reaches a new level. In Yudi's case, we could safely say that his influence is just going to start. There's no question that his family misses him dearly, his friends miss him dearly, and we all will miss him dearly. As far as Yudi's influence on the world, it's most noticeable when he's physically not here. The fact that people are still talking about him, people are still moved by him, people are still inspired by him, and the institutions that he started are still continuing and they're growing. The fact that now he's out of 40 and Yudi lives on. So the Eibusher should help that all of his efforts that he invested so much into should continue to grow and to flourish. And he should be a Meilus Yosher for his Mazali Geber. How about that? His Mazali Geber should be there for his wife and his children and his whole parents and whole family and friends. And the main thing is that we should see him again with the coming of Mashiach. L'chaim. Shkoyach for arranging this.
Thank you, Rabbi Lipska, for those Varim Meverta. I want to encourage everybody on that note that if you haven't yet joined JNet, either as a volunteer or as a student, you should take this opportunity to go to jnet.org/volunteer or /learn and sign up. And like Lipska said, it could be for 1 month, for 2 months. It could be you want to learn something very deep, something very easy, whatever you want, on whatever level you're on. There's always somebody who could be helped. And the feedback we always get is that however much you join thinking you can be helping somebody else, you end up receiving much, much more. Baruch Hashem. I want to mention one more time about the Sefer Torah. I'm actually going to play a quick video about the Sefer Torah, and then we'll play, hopefully it's going to work, we'll play a video of the Rebbe's Farbrengen, where they sing the Dalet Bavos, and then that's the end of the official program. So anyone wants to stay afterwards and Farbrengen is more than welcome to. So that's what's going to happen now.